Hi everyone, and welcome to another tutorial video for the Combat Mission Professional Edition. This time around we're going to be looking at how we can create replays and also how to look at the event logs that the game produces so that you can do after action reviews and potentially share these replays and data outputs with other people. So first thing we're going to do is look at the replays. For this, we're going to be in our documents, Battlefront, Combat Mission, Professional, and then Game Files folder. Something like this. You can see that there are a number of folders in here if you've not been in here before. The key ones that we're going to be looking at are incoming email, outgoing email, and the saved games folder. The critical thing basically is that when you're creating a replay, only the actual files from that replay can be in these folders. So for example, at the moment all of my files are in this saved games folder, which means that this is going to be fine. But if there was another game in here, so the files from another game, what I would just do is create a new folder, call it another game, and then I would move all of those files into that folder just to get them out of the way, basically, because otherwise the game can get a bit confused about what it's meant to be compiling. And now they will just undo that. I can get rid of that. The same applies to incoming email and outgoing email. Obviously these are empty at the moment because I'm not got any play email games going. But if you are playing play by email games, make sure that again these folders, anything in here is in a subfolder, otherwise the game will get confused. If you wanted to make a replay from an email game, you need to make sure that all of the email files are in the same folder. So you put all of your outgoing into the incoming folder or the other way around, and again making sure that there's nothing in the saved games folder that's going to interfere, and that will let you be ready to go. So as I say, we've just got the saved games folder here, so you can see I've got about 25 minutes of gameplay, I guess. All that we're going to do, there are two ways to create a replay. There's one way of doing it directly from the game itself, and another way to do it through the scenario editor, which is easier, post-event basically. So we'll look at the one in the game itself first. So I'm going to open up Combat Mission. We'll load up a saved game, so we'll just load up the last one, which is this one. Okay, so here we are in the game. This is a replay of one of the last turns, which is actually fine for us. Okay, so all of our units here have just moved off the edge of the map, so the only units we have left are a couple of panicking people. That's fine. So if the game were to end and it flashes up the score screen, that's what we're trying to get to basically, is the score screen. So the easiest way to do that in a single player game is just to do menus and then ceasefire. AI automatically accepts, therefore we can look at the after action report, and you'll see at the bottom there's just a button called create replay. This is going to do exactly what you think it's going to do basically. As I say, it's worth double checking that in your saved games folder it's just your saved games from this current game, and of course that your incoming and outgoing emails folders are similarly clean. I'm all happy with that, so what I'm going to do is go back into the game, and I'm just going to click create replay. It basically tells you to check what I just said there, that your autosave files are correct and they're complete as well. You have to have all of them, otherwise it can have problems. And it's going to go ahead and compile. So we just wait for this to play out. Okay, fantastic. So there you go. We've had success. We've all been combined into the replay file below, so it tells you what it's going to be called. It says you'll find it in the replay directories. You can move the files to a safe place. So I'm just going to hit OK. It'll drop us out of the game. I'm going to Alt-Tab, back out again. And then what I'm going to do is navigate to the replays folder. So Combat Mission Professional, we're going to go back to the Professional folder. You'll see that there is a replays folder in here. Open that up. I can see Bob Balaclava Mission 1 Find, which is right there. I'm just going to rename this to in-game, because then we're going to do the exact same process through the scenario editor and create a second one. You notice that it says you can run through VLC, but you cannot run it through VLC. You have to use the inbuilt replay tool that installs automatically with your copy of Combat Mission Pro. We're going to go through that in a little bit. Before we do, I'm going to go back into the game. I'm going to show you how we do it through the scenario editor. So first thing we're going to do, open up the scenario editor. Then in the top left here, in the drop down menu, all you have to do is click drop down. Obviously you check all your files are in the right place and you hit create replay file. It just does the exact same thing. Okay, there we go. That same message as before. It literally does exactly the same thing basically. We hit OK. So if we go over to our replay folder now, you can see that it has another one, and then I can just change that to use. So those are the two methods for creating a replay. You either do it in-game by hitting ceasefire or surrender or whatever, or just getting to that score screen. So you can do it obviously when you finish the scenario if it ends automatically. The other way is to put all of the files, copy and paste them basically into one of the correct folders, making sure that all the other folders are clear. Then you just go into the scenario editor and click compile replay from the drop down menu. So what we're going to look at next is how to actually open up one of these replays. I'm going to open up a new window for this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is navigate to the install folder of combat missions so that we can actually watch the replays. So that's on my D drive. Program files x86, then it's Matrix Games, Combat Mission Professional Edition, and you'll see there's a second application, so this is the main one, and there's one called CM Professional Replay. What we do is just load that up. Okay, so on the main menu we have the option to replay battle. I'm just going to click that. I'm going to open one of them up. They're both the same, so it's my witch. Load that. Okay, that all loads up, and here we can see what the replay viewer looks like. So if you've played the combat mission games, obviously you'll be familiar with all the controls. They're all exactly the same for flying the camera around and stuff. You'll see that we can now see both blue and red. The only restriction on this, basically, if you select a unit, it will just display that unit's perspective, and it will also hide any dismounts that are inside opponent vehicles whilst you've got it selected. But the replay controls are the same, so I'll hit play here, and we'll see units start to move around. It shows you still their perception of the battlefield, so that's all the same. You can also turn on the UAS zones. You can still see where all the UAS are. You can turn on command links as well, I think. When you select a unit. So if you wanted to look at unmanned ground units, for example, then that's one way to do that still. So the only thing that is different are the time skips. Normally it's just 5 seconds at a time. In this one there's a 15-second jump and a 2-minute jump, which as you can see lets you speed back and forth through the replay editor much more quickly. You can still access all the briefings if you needed to, so if you wanted to do an AAR entirely within the replay viewer, you could, by taking people through the ConOps or the briefings to start with, briefing them on the tactical map, any little things, extra things, and then getting straight into the game. Okay, so that concludes how we would create a replay and then how we would watch a replay. So the next part of this video is going to deal with how we look at our event logs. One final thing that I just forgot to mention quickly is the data tab. So this is a new option, a new menu that you can open up. When you do, it shows you basically a breakdown of the data that is within the game. So how many soldiers are on either side, how many active vehicles there are, and as the game goes on, if you skip forward, it will tell you how much ammunition has been expended. So at the moment, only 10 rounds of 7.62 have been fired. If we keep going through to the point where we're in fighting, you can see that those rounds will track across the course of the battle. So again, for those kinds of after action reviews where you wanted to talk people through what's happening, it's actually really useful. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is the event logs that are generated by Combat Mission whenever you play the game. So these all live in the event logs folder. So Combat Mission, this is in your documents folder to begin with: documents, Battlefront, Combat Mission, Professional, and event logs. To situate you, this is roughly the same place that your save games all exist. And if you're running any mods, it's in the same place that your mods exist as well. So the event logs folder, if we open that up, basically generates CSV files, so common separated value files. Usually you'd open these with Excel. I don't have Excel on this computer, so what I'm going to show you basically is how you can use Google Drive to do exactly the same thing. Every time you execute a turn, or process a turn, I guess I should say, in combat mission, it will generate log files of the whole game up to that point. So there are a few key things here. If you're playing head to head with someone, only one of you is technically processing the turn, usually whoever goes second at the start. When they hit go, when they hit end turn, it will process their turn. If you're the first player, it won't process. If you're in single player, it always processes because there's only one thing being processed. So just be aware, sometimes you might have to ask your opponents to give you their log files, or open up one of their turns and execute it, and then like almost delete the last turn or whatever of event log. That works as well. The other thing to know about these is that you don't have to have all of the save games in order to generate the files. You just have to have, it just generates them from whatever file you execute. So you could just take the last file in a game, process it by hitting end turn, and it will generate the whole event logs for the whole game, even though you've only got one save game. So if you wanted to show something to someone, you could just send them that one file, and it will work. So there are 3 separate files. I'm just going to move these guys into Google Drive so that I can actually open them up and show you. Normally, obviously, if you do have Excel, Microsoft Office, whatever, on your computer, you could just open them straight away. This works fine as well. So there are 3 files. The main one that we'll be worrying about is the complete file. This is the one, if you're ever asked to do any analysis, this will be what you have to send. There's also a units file, which you can just open up quickly with Google Sheets. This basically just shows you the ORBAT that was being used in the game. So you can see this is from, again, Mission 1, Operation Balaclava. You can see on the blue side here, there are 23 units. They're from 421 Brigade Breckie Company. It shows you what platoon they're part of, so 1st platoon, 2nd platoon, 3rd platoon. And if they have a second section or whatever, if they're organised as sections, basically, it will show you what section. It also gives you the unit name. So you can see it's Air Control Team, Company Headquarters Team here, their command team, all the different recon squads, crews, and then what vehicle they're riding in at the start of the battle if they're assigned to one. So you see the crews are assigned to their BTR-70s, whereas the squads that are inside are just kind of riding shotgun. They're not, they don't own the vehicle, I guess. And this will display the whole ORBAT for both sides. You know, it does not include any fires or offensive support, or your UAS and things like that, so you'd have to keep track of manually. The complete file and the summary file are basically the same. Summary is just key events, essentially, whereas the complete one is every event. So we're going to use the event log complete, because this is the main one. We'll see when we open it up. These are quite big files usually, so yeah, I think we saw 4 megabytes. I don't know how many lines it is, but it's going to be quite a few. This is what the outputs will look like. And again, if you're part of any of the decentralized analysis that we're going to be looking at doing, this is the key file that will be asking you to send to us, basically, probably after renaming it. The reason we'd ask you to rename things is because obviously if we get 100 submissions and they're all called event log file complete, we're not going to have a clue. So I would just name this one Tom DSTL, not the one. Okay, so it's just basic, unique, identifiable. We know who it's come from, where it's come from, all that sort of stuff. Okay, so inside this folder, or sorry, inside this file, we have a number of different things. So I'll just take you through some of the key ways you can really quickly analyze these files. This might not be that interesting to most of you, so if you're not interested in actually doing the analysis yourself, feel free to turn off the video here. I've shown you how to find the file and what we're after basically from it. For those of you more interested, the first thing you want to do is going to put a filter on everything. Okay, so we've got a filter on all of the columns. I will see as we work through, basically some of these are more useful than others. So we have event ID, that's just ID number, the event type. If we drop this down, you see there's loads of different event types in the game. There's a shot fired, vehicles being hit, people losing spotting, people stop moving or start moving, that kind of thing. All of those are captured in the game. It gives you the real time, so that will be counting up basically, and then the replay clock which counts down. Usually we look at the replay clock to be easier to understand. So for example, all of these are taken at 40 minutes on the clock, then they go down to 39.55 seconds, etc. The force, so blue or red, their unit ID. So again, this matches the unit ID in the units folder. In the units CSV, the event log units. Again, some details on where they are all batted. So that's covered over all of this stuff. If they're operating a vehicle, that'll be the M column. If they're just riding inside a vehicle, that'll be in the N column. Their location, so they've got X, Y coordinates, and also they have an elevation. So this is their space in 3D, basically. What terrain they're occupying. So usually it'll be open ground or a building, perhaps, if it's dismounts. How many active soldiers are in that team at the time or in that unit. So obviously if you're tracking casualties, you can track how these go down. Their level of suppression, which I think goes up to 100. It might go higher than that. Basically, it's just a number that reflects how suppressed they are, whether they are pinned or not. That's just yes, no. Their morale level, how much morale they've lost, what their fatigue level is, and the number against that, what their C3 is like. So in terms of do they have, so for example, these guys have full C3 visual and audio, but not through electronic, which I'm guessing is a GPS thing. All the ammo that they're carrying, I think they can have up to 10 types of ammo. You'll see, so again, if you wanted to track ammo expenditure, probably easier through the replay editor to be honest, but that's one way to do it as well. Grenades that they're carrying, you'll see there's a bunch of entries here for enemy ID. The reason for that is if we quickly just drop this down to just blue, and then what I'm going to do is go over to this column and choose hit result, and I'm going to change this to be just killed and seriously wounded. So killed and seriously wounded, this is what we term in the STL an incapacitating hit, i.e. you have knocked someone out of the fight. And I filter by that. This is going to show us all of the blue units that suffered a hit basically at some point in the game. So if you can see on the event type, all of these guys got hit inside a vehicle. Some people got hit by explosions, so usually that's a bullet, although it's possible to be hit by a shell. And then hit by explosion is quite common if you're swinging around HE and artillery and all that sort of stuff. Again, this is only the blue side that we've filtered this by. So if we open that up to the red side as well, you can see all the red casualties. Usually you want to do them one at a time, so it's a bit easier to understand what you're looking at. So it gives you a unit ID still, all of that stuff is the same. However, what we then fill in is the enemy, i.e. the shooter, their ID, where they are located, what they're part of, and perhaps importantly, what projectile they've caused the casualty with. So this is how you might look at this, and you can see, alright, 30mm cannon is dealing quite a lot of the damage here compared to the others. RPGs are also having an effect. So you can see there's a bit of small arms, GPMG fire as well going in, and then you can check what the hit results are. And if we swap this over to knocked out, we can see this is the vehicles. So scroll back over to the left. We can see operating vehicles. So BMP2 was knocked out, a BCR-70 and a BRM-1K, and they were knocked out by an RPG through the front turret, a 30mm through the upper front hull, and 30mm through the lower front hull. These are a bit sporadic, I will say that. Some vehicles don't show up properly in these knocked out, so if you look at it and you're like, oh, that's a bit weird, there's some vehicles missing, you're probably right. So things like jackals, for example, because of the way they work in combat mission, they don't tend to show up very often in this particular output. For example, a lot of the time jackal crew might be killed because by small arms the vehicle will be fine, but because they've got no protection they'll be killed with small arms. So they would show up as a loss, as an incapacitating hit, rather than as the vehicle knocked out, even though, and then if the vehicle got destroyed afterwards, it would potentially not show up in the results. So just be careful with that. Not all these results are perfect, but that should be hopefully a kind of useful initial way that you can kind of get to grips with the event logs. You just play around with the different filters, so you can find some interesting stuff. For example, if we just go to kill and seriously wounded again, we can look at the average range of a hit here. Not in, yeah, so the average range of successful hit from red against blue is 128 meters. So we could potentially then compare that to what is the successful hit of blue against red. So we just have to swap that over. So now we're looking at the red people that have been hit. See, there's more of them. Go down to the range, have a look at the average. So it's only 87 meters here. So to me, that suggests that red either have better long range firepower, or potentially that they are ambushing blue at a longer range and therefore able to engage them at a more effective distance than blue, who are having to kind of get in close and almost when it's too late, I guess. Red have already engaged them. So there's some broad analysis you can kind of do looking at this stuff. There we go. So I say hopefully that's useful as we look to expand into our future operating concepts, I guess, with Combat Mission and Fight Club. What we're hoping to do is offload some of the analysis out to you guys, basically. So we would send you scenarios, games, you would play through them, generate these event log files, and then you would send them back to DSTL or back to the Fight Club Council, perhaps, and then we could take all of those data files and compare them against each other to see if we can find existing trends that we're seeing. Okay, that's the conclusion of this video. So if you have any questions, please post them to me on the Fight Club Slack. I'm under there. I'm on the Slack as Tom DSDL. Happy to take any questions on these as we go through.